So the next question is, what do you feel is the legitimate function of government, and how much of a hand should it have in our lives?
So, I mean, this is a difficult question to answer because it's going to piss a lot of people off, especially if any of this gets out to someone like Adam Kokesh or even that guy T.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
I mean, I'm fans of both of them, but um, I do believe that border security is imperative, and some socialization is necessary. You know, you do need your roads, you do need your public water system, you do need your electrical grids, you do need certain things to be provided for by a bigger bureaucracy, because if you have private companies doing this, well, eventually the best one's always going to rise, and they can just gouge people.
No, exactly.
You know?
Like I was even told that the video game BioShock is apparently follows the whole ANCAP utopia to its logical end.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, having the government be that monopoly isn't all that great either, but there can be private companies within that system, and there's always going to be a price control on government, because people can say, hey, you're actually beholden to me. Well, at least in America, they could say, you're beholden to me, I'm not going to fucking pay this.
FedEx.
Yeah, do your job or somebody else will. And I just don't like the idea of big government and big corporation going hand in hand together until we're all paying out the ass just to live. And some might complain we're already doing that now, but I live pretty comfortably, and I'm not working 18 hours a day. Hell, most of the time I'm not even working 8 hours a day. It's like 6, 7 here and there. But I think international security is also a thing. There needs to be a military, because if you have nice things, people will want to take those nice things.
Exactly. Somebody has to have the monopoly on force to not only secure you, but to enforce the rule of law. Period.
Yeah.
You can't rely on on all people to adhere to the non-aggression principle, as good a principle as it is.
Yeah, and then a nationalized currency and a nationalized law system. I think those are definitely fair. Of course, when you get to local stuff, the police officers will enforce different laws depending on what demographics they're dealing with and what crimes they're looking at in what proportions. But generally, I think, the government, their involvement is definitely necessary. It's currency, borders, military, law, and certain public systems that everybody uses. But beyond that, after that, I get into a gray area. I go, well, how much is too much? I think we were talking about this, I think last week. The implementation of the Great Society was, I think, one of the worst things that ever happened to America in our history. I don't like the idea of a federalized education system as it is, and I don't like the idea of, well, let's pump more money into it, because when you have...
Has it worked?
Yeah, especially...
Has it worked? Go watch Stefan Molyneux, man. He talks about this stuff all the time. Pumping more money into these systems does not work.
Yeah, and it's just like, I can't understand why you would have anyone, that has no idea what you're living with, like in El Paso. Why would you have people in D.C. who've never been to Texas, let alone El Paso, Texas? Why would you have them deciding what your curriculum needs to be?
Exactly. And even then you see this Common Core stuff, and the history is just propaganda. The math is... I can't even talk about it because it's like... Ugh.
Oh, well, that's how they do it, I hate using him as an example, but Hitler did this very well. Because let's make the education system ours, and let all the chips fall where they may, or where we intend them to, and it worked beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, there is a way to do it, but that doesn't mean that it's ethical.
Yeah, and I just, yeah, I really do not like federalized education, and not everybody belongs in college. I don't think even a majority of people belong in college. I think maybe a plurality, but generally, I think probably 1 in 4 people going to college is probably too many. I might be an asshole for that, but just a lot of people aren't cut out for it, and now that it's practically free to go, it's just a waste of time and money. And now we're inflating the system, and the cream of the crop aren't always floating to the top anymore.
No, not with affirmative action in place.
Yeah, and so now we have people with worthless degrees, and they go, why are these degrees worthless? Oh, because too many people have them. Well, why do too many people have them? Because of the government programs that you wanted. And they go, oh, well, the government's great. And then you have people like Bernie Sanders like, oh, the government needs a whole workover. And then it's like, so you think the makeover is going to be giving them more money? Like, how does that work in someone's head,
No kidding, man. I mean, studying business and also being involved with network marketing, interestingly enough, has actually taught me that, school is almost useless these days. Unless you're going into a hard STEM subject, a specialized business subject, or like an art, like you're like an art school, don't even bother. Do not even bother, because otherwise you are just wasting your time. If you can believe this, even the market for lawyers is oversaturated. Yes, you know how people point to the whole doctors and lawyers as being like the secure quote unquote jobs. Well, even lawyers are not secure anymore. They can't find work. You're having lawyers working at McDonald's. It's a sad situation.
Jesus.
Yeah, I could go on about that, but alrighty. So now we're going to get a little more personal here with this question. Now, you, Isaac, you're an atheist. You've made that no secret. I'm a born-again Christian. I've made no secret of that. Mm-hmm. It's interesting how well chemistry we have despite despite that ideological difference of ours. But what do you believe the purpose of religion should be in society, especially since we're seeing Western civilization crumble with the loss of its traditional Protestant Christian ideals? I ask this in light of more and more atheist public figures like Dave Cullen, Naked Ape, Stefan Molyneux, warming up to Christians again.
Well, I'm not sure what the role should be, but I think what it does very well is it stabilizes the nation, and it grows the nation, because you're given these values. Okay, it's man and wife. Why do you need man and wife? So you can procreate. Why do you procreate? So you can grow as a society. And don't murder. Well, why not? Well, because that's one less possible convert that you could have. And when you have a religion that's pretty much national, you have a homogenous society, and I think that's a huge problem that the left has with accepting. They always say, "Oh, well, we need to be multicultural." No, we don't. Actually, that's actually the last thing we need to be. We can be multiracial, which I think they sometimes substitute and interchange. I'm not really sure. But
it definitely seems to be a problem of both the social justice left and the alt-right. They seem incapable of separating race from culture.
Yeah, and you can have a multiracial society, and it's perfectly fine. But they need to be culturally homogenous, and one of the ways you do that is with religion. Now, I mean, I'm an atheist, but I definitely wouldn't side with the Muslims anytime soon. And I think what they're doing right now is, because they're so far behind culturally, I mean, just like fucking like 1,000 years behind, they're doing exactly what a religion's golden age is supposed to do. They're infiltrating other cultures, slowly turning them into assimilating them.
Or at least outbreeding their native populations.
Yes. And spreading their faith by violent means, by nefarious means, by malevolent means, however they can. And as as a result, they always boast, oh, well, Islam is the fastest growing religion. Well, it's not for the reasons they think.
It's like my dad said whenever this comes up that Islam is the fastest growing religion. My dad adds this little caveat. It's the world's fastest growing enforced religion. Christianity may be the largest, but that's not because it's compulsory.
Yeah.
It's because it just resonates with more people. If Islam were to compete on its own, I think it's safe to say that it would not survive well in its current state in the marketplace of religion.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if you read the Quran, the musings of Muhammad and the multiple forgers that got into his book, I mean, he couldn't even read, so his child wife had to write it for him. But, yeah, they're just psychopathic. And a lot of them are just ridiculous. There's one part where he rides to paradise on like a half llama or half camel, half lion, half woman thing. It's like a man-bear pig. I'm not really sure. It's been a couple years since I've read it, but I mean, a lot of this stuff, it's laughable. And I think that even though all of this is laughable, they're still a force to be reckoned with, for sure. Like I said, I think they're in their golden age right now because they are spreading incredibly fast. There's almost no country that doesn't have any. And they have such an insulated system that it's impenetrable. Every couple days now, there's a new terror incident. Just today in Brussels, there was a suicide bomber. Thank God they shot him in time, but yeah, it's just all the time now. And the global index of terrorism, it doesn't look good.
No.
So
last summer in Europe, it was one terror attack a day.
Huh.
Like in the European Union, it was bad.
Yeah.
Last summer was bad. I mean, this summer is bad.
Yeah, but to get back to the question, I think the role of religion in a society is definitely to stabilize and to grow a society, and to help it thrive.
I'd agree with you there, and to throw in a little bit of Christian perspective that I've noticed again a lot of these same atheists and agnostics talk about is that there was a certain uniqueness to the Protestant sect of Christianity that was never found in the Catholic or Orthodox sects. The Protestants broke away from the long-standing Christian tradition of the rulers are appointed by God, therefore you should pray for them but not attempt to oppose them. Mm-hmm. The three main groups were Martin Luther in Germany, John Calvin in France, and King Henry VIII in England. Martin Luther particularly was tired of the Catholic Church teaching heretical things and being given no room to question any of it. So what do? He broke away from the Catholic Church, left his 95 Theses on the door, and took his followers, and they became the Lutherans. The Anglican Church, same thing. It was King Henry VIII. He had his own reasons. John Calvin had his own reasons. But I think it was the American Revolution that solidified it, that the whole concept of Protestant work ethic. And if you were to really read the Bible, God never called, the Judeo-Christian God, in New Testament times, never calls for a theocracy. Now, some Christians may want one, but God never advocated for it. And something most people don't know is that after the Israelites had been led to their new homeland, which became Israel, the Israelites begged for a king. They begged for a king because everyone else had one, and God repeatedly told them, "No, I'm not going to give you a king because if I do, he'll usurp his authority and taint my word. He'll think and claim to speak for me." Eventually, God said, "Okay, fine, I'll give you what you wanted, and I'll let that take its logical course." And Israel's history is history. And even Jesus, people say, he was a liberal, he was a hippie, he was a communist, he was a socialist. He was none of those things. He was a man of principle who lived on his own, never married. He was, as per Christian interpretation, the Son of God made flesh. But he was asked repeatedly, especially by the religious leaders who kept trying to get him with aha questions, about government, because at the time Israel was under the dominion of Rome. Rome had. You could therefore argue that the authority of Caesar was illegitimate. It was illegitimately acquired. One time they asked him, prophet, you speak great words. So tell us, is it against our laws to pay taxes to Caesar? Now, this was a very good question and got people riled up. And he said, okay, fine. Show me a denarius, a Roman silver coin. And he asks the crowd, whose name and face do you see on this coin? And they all said Caesar. And he said, then give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God's. He set the precedent that it's possible to serve both God and government, that they didn't have to be served simultaneously, or that the government had to be theocratic whatsoever. If anything, I'd argue that Jesus was kind of a libertarian, especially if you read like Romans 14, which talks about how every Christian's walk with God is individual. I'm not kidding. Romans 14 has to be one of the most pluralistic passages I've ever read. It says things like all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. So one man might see one day as holier than the rest. The other may see all days as equal. Don't disparage each other for your differences. One may believe in being a vegan, that eating animals is wrong. Then for that man it is wrong. One man believes that it's okay to eat everything, which is true. It's okay for him to eat everything. But don't you dare disparage one another or cause one another to slip over these petty differences. If it's wrong, if it's wrong to you, then it is wrong for you. And I'd like to think that Protestant Christianity brought back that true sense of individualism that the church had not seen. And if it wasn't for Protestant Christianity, because the Catholic Church is bureaucratic, it's a centralized church body, I don't think Western civilization would have ever materialized, at least in a principles sense. Yeah. But yeah, I do agree with your ascertainment that religion, call it opiate of the masses all you want, it produces homogenous societies who are all on the same page. Is it illusion? Maybe, but I don't know. Makes life generally pretty good so long as the faith's not barbaric like Islam.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just sort of my Christian take on it. And speaking of, as a Christian, I've always associated the loss of a God figure in society with the increasing destruction of society from within. Do you think that postmodernism was the inevitable result of modernism's insistence on breaking with Christianity for the sake of objectivity? That maybe some people just didn't want to live by any rule, so they twisted modernism's insistence on, quote-unquote, searching for the truth without religion, to then become, oh, well, everyone's biased at the debate forum, so there isn't any absolute truth at all, so do whatever the hell you want and don't judge me.
So, I think postmodernism is, I guess, the runt of the litter's protest against modernists. Well, we couldn't debate them on their grounds, objective, rational, so we had to make our own. Mm-hmm. Because, if you look at the spaces that postmodernists occupy, they're not taken seriously most of the time by hard scientists or really by anybody except those that have been indoctrinated. There was that second scandal, the societal complex penis or something, that paper. It was
wasn't that a 4chan thing?
I can't remember, but they published it.
Yeah, it was an obvious hoax just to see if they publish it, and they did.
Yeah, and they've done this before. I forgot the other guy's name, but he did this, I think, back in the 90s, where he just wrote postmodernist garbage, just had it vomit upon itself. And they were like, this is brilliant, it's so profound I can't understand it. So they published it, and I honestly think that, when you're the 99th out of 100, you're going to go with postmodernism. Because at that point, everyone sounds smart. Because, what is smart?
Being able to use big flourishy words?
Yes, and whose argument can be truly righteous. As long as you can keep your bullshit consistent, even if you're black or brown, you don't even have to do that much. As long as you can just keep doubling down harder and harder and harder on your arguments, you can make it in this field. And I just I don't think it was inevitable. Maybe it was inevitable, but I think it took a really petty mind to create it, because I just don't see the merit in it at all. All it does is halt dialogue. It halts intellectual discussion, and it places a ban on intellectual rigor and growth of the mind. It's just you can argue yourself into a circle in about half an hour using postmodernist theory or critical theory. And I mean, sure, it can be fun to kind of play sandbox with it, but as an actual exercise, no. What worth is it? What inherent value does it have? And it doesn't have any. And I think that's what's so difficult about debating critical theorists and postmodernists, is all of their terms are so nebulous and so just, foreign to people that you can't understand them most of the time. And if you can understand them, the terms are so vague that you can't really argue against it.
Hetero, cis, normative.
Yeah.
All these words.
And I think that's what the problem is. And kind of the best thing to do is to just troll them. That's the only way to show how ridiculous they are, and then the masses will stop taking it seriously. Because sure, it sounds great when you say, you're a transnormative, cisphobic, something, whatever. But once you break down what they're saying and take a second to breathe, it's just garbage.
No, it really is. Yeah, I'd ask that because, again, this is where my Christian perspective comes in. I had always seen, like when you're a kid, atheists are dicks.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They really are. They just are. They disparage Christians nonstop. It was the bullying got so bad in middle school and even parts of high school. Not gonna lie, but it almost seemed that growing up, and thank God I see differently now. It always seemed like atheists just wanted to be able to do whatever without a guilty conscience. So what they would do is just get rid of God and claim, oh, God's just superstition. I'm gonna rely on science, and because there's no God, I can do whatever I want.
Well, I've gotta stop you there. It wasn't that intelligent.
What's up?
The thought process behind being a dick as a young atheist.
They thought themselves smart people.
Oh no, exactly, they did. But so a lot of this social justice garbage that you see nowadays, they think they're contrarian. They think they're going against the grain. No, you are the grain. So with atheism, I think you see that in the early stages. They're always told, oh well, Christianity is the dominant faith. It's everybody is, and blah 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 blah. But if you're an atheist, it makes you smarter. It makes you
because you can question.
Yeah,
you can be a skeptic.
You're a scientist.
Trademark.
And all this stuff. And so a lot of them believe themselves to be tearing down the establishment somehow. And it's just like, oh, well, that's interesting. And, like you're not, of course, but that's exactly why they won't attack Muslims. Because they don't see them as the establishment.
Yeah, exactly.
And furthermore, they've been given this racial, these racial degrees in which to judge people. Oh, well, they don't fit the color wheel that they've designed. So they think, oh, well, they're given a pass because they're not establishment. Their beliefs are even, more ridiculous when you put them side by side. It's, you believe in a llama lady? What?
What is that?
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible never had anything that crazy.
Yeah, it's just like you go to heaven and you don't have a butthole anymore. What is this? and so, and the 72 virgins are supposed to be hot. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And and they're not 9. I think that's something that most Muslims would be pissed off if they found out that their 72 virgins aren't 9 years old. They'd be like, that's a woman? Ugh. Come on. Yeah, I don't want that.
Hoping for a prepubescent.
Yeah, like she has boobs already? Gross.
Yeah, pedophilia seems to be a problem in the Muslim world.
And rampant homosexuality.
Yes, that is the very interesting thing, homosexuality. Especially pedophilic homosexuality.
Yeah.
I for the life of me don't know why.
Oh, the poor boys over there.
Oh, gosh.
But yeah, I think that's the atheists. They're not as smart as you're making them out to be. It's just that they think they're being edgy. They think they're being anti-establishment by being dicks to what they see as the establishment.
And a lot of them did clearly mature and realize that, hey, we Christians aren't all a bunch of backwards bigots. We Christians had our enlightenment.
Yeah.
We understand science and objectivity. In fact, Christians invented more than half of everything scientific. But I have to wonder: would you say then that it was the permanently adolescent, degenerate atheists who ended up paving the way for postmodernism? That being said, because the mature atheists are the modernists. They're the ones who stress in singular objectivity. Would you say that it's not just the younger atheists, but also the ones who never quite grow up, and who become obsessed with their own degeneracy, that they just say, screw it, there is no truth because I don't want rules?
Yeah, the ones that are, I guess, suffering from arrested development. I'm not sure if I can really say that with any integrity, because I'm not sure how far down that whole complex goes. Honestly, I do think that there's something that must have happened to most of these people for them to just totally go the way that they're going. And I think the reason why you see so many white people that are on this social justice progressive left is because they've been fed this stuff for so long. Well, the only way you can repent for your whiteness is if you side with us.
You become an ally in their terms.
Yeah, and even then they get shit on anyway. But
yeah.
And it's just I think that it's not a coincidence. I think that it's definitely because they were either guilted into it or they were given these really awful suppositions and just laden with sophistry. And that sounded convincing, and nobody in that room was brave enough to speak up, so they didn't, and so that just became their narrative. And I mean, I can't even blame the teachers anymore, because when there's no professional or social consequence to indoctrinating the kids that you're teaching, why not?
Yeah, just go on ahead, truck on ahead as normal.
Yeah, there's absolutely no repercussions for this.
I know, it's insane. So, what are your thoughts on Dr. Jordan B. Peterson bringing religion back to the discussion table just when the skeptic community, as it's called, just when they thought religion was a solved issue? Religion's been debunked entirely, and here you have Dr. Peterson at the plate.
I think he's doing great with that. I think we definitely needed Christianity to come back, make a comeback, especially with somebody that's such a legitimate intellectual. Mm-hmm. He's got his credentials, and he's opened up the minds of so many people. And now he's seen as, he's bringing back Christianity. He's making it, for lack of a better term, he's making it cool again. He's making it okay to be a Christian and out in the open about it. Well, it's like, all Christians are dumb. Well, he is not. And I listened to the debate between Sam Harris and himself, and Sam Harris sounded like an angsty teenager trying to convince the Christian that he's wrong. And Dr. Peterson's there like, no, actually.
Oh man.
He's like, but don't you think, like, he goes, nope. And like it just continued on that way. And I think it's good that he came to the forefront and he's standing up for what he believes in religiously. Because I mean, this guy's got balls of steel. Holy shit. He's in the belly of the beast, and he does not give a fuck. But I mean, that's a man of integrity. And you're looking at this, and it's making it harder for social justice warriors to bring more people to their side, the more publicity that Dr. Jordan B. Peterson gets. Because, oh, well, see, the skeptics are also atheists, most of them. Like, see, like, we're right on that too. It's just we're not racist. And then it's like, well, actually, no, this guy also disagrees with you on that point. And, maybe more of the closeted Christians out there are going to start coming out because of Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. And I think it's great what he's doing. I mean, obviously, like, I'm not religious myself, but I'm not an anti-theist. And so I think that's a big distinction that a lot of people don't really credit some atheists for. They just hear atheists and they think, oh, they're just going to shit on religion. And that's one problem that I had with the skeptic community, is that they believed it was a solved issue, and it's like we're all in line about this one thing, and it's just like, okay, and you're saying we shouldn't be collectivist, right? Why can't people hold their own beliefs in terms of theocratic or theological instances? I mean, and that goes for Islam too. I think that these people should be able to just hold their own beliefs. It's just that they definitely need a reformation, because I wouldn't be so easy on Christianity if they were still murderous like they were every leftist dream, the Crusades,
Exactly.
Which they always describe as like, that was a defensive war. No, it wasn't, and whatever. But yeah, if Christianity was still a brutal religion, then I would say, yeah, I'd still be critical of them too and say they need reform, but they're not. And to say otherwise is just a false equivalency on its ass. And I think that the skeptic community wouldn't be so harsh on Muslims if there was a Muslim skeptic. I guarantee you they would not touch it.
Interesting point there.
Yeah, well, it's just like the Lacey Green thing. Well, she's open to hear different ideas now. And so many people were praising her. And it's like, no, dude, she still has deeply regressive values and arguments. We still need to pressure her on this.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the same goes for any SJW that comes over and says, okay, I'm not going to shut you down anymore, and I'm not going to block you out anymore. I'm going to listen. And that's great. Like, don't be hostile toward them, but keep the pressure on. And I think that would be it was lost on the skeptic community when Lacey Green went over, and then after a little while, Sargon and some others were like, no, she's still an SJW. She's just not as bad as the rest of them. And I think the same would go for a Muslim. They would all be like, oh, look, we finally have one. And then they go, but what about his ideas about, unbelievers and shit? And they go, well, I mean, I think that's kind of what would happen.
I don't know if the skeptic community as a whole is quite that cucked. I mean, Sargon definitely seemed to say, you know what, she is listening, but
yeah,
like I never heard one instance of him getting his hopes up about her views having changed. And to be honest, I follow several of the skeptic community members. I don't think I saw a single one of them hopeful that her views had changed, just that she's open to listen.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just like hearing something that I want to hear or whatever, like a chink in the armor. But yeah, I guess I'm talking about the comment sections where it was just like, oh, see,
the comments. Okay,
maybe. But
yeah, when I think skeptic community, I guess what I sort of think of is the high profile figures.
Yeah,
you're Sargon of Akkad, you're Crowton T, you're V, you're Dave Cullen, you're Naked Ape. Like these guys.
Well, yeah, I probably misspoke there, for sure.
I should have made the terminology a little more concise.